there, people of the internet. My name is Jagero, and this is Dialogues with Jagero. The issue of mental health has been something that has been going on for some times now. But I think in the last 5 or so years, a lot of people have been talking about mental health. I was talking to my friend, and he was telling me that, that is my friend Omundio Chuka, that nowadays people are very, it's like a sort of wokeness, or falling in love with mental health and saying, my whatever, my PTSD has come back, I am like this, I'm like that. It's like some sort of glorification of mental illness, And I'm just thinking, is it really true that there is a lot of mental illness today than we had before, or that there is something going on, something fishy going on that we don't know? And then I was reading an article on the internet about NHIS, that is the government body that control hospitals and things like that in the UK. They partnered with a Big Pharma in the US, and together they produced a form which every patient must fill, and that form is actually monitoring your mental health. And they were saying that the bar is so low for that form that the moment there are 2 questions there that if you tick, automatically they put you on mental health medicine. And a lot of people are disagreeing and saying a lot of people, doctors and health professionals, are now moving away from talk therapy and going to giving people medicine. That should not be the case. And today, of course, I'm having my friend for some time, Robert Munuku. Robert Munuku, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
Yes. So what do you think about the whole issue of mental healthness?
Mental health is a very complex issue.
Yeah.
I think to discuss mental health, you need to incorporate professionals who actually deal with this matter exclusively. I'm talking about people who've done not just psychiatry or even psychology, but even social workers, people who work in the community, because you have to remember that mental health or mental wellness is a factor of everyday life. So if you're talking about the issue of pharmaceuticals or medicines and everything, you need to contextualize that with professionals. What I can give myself is what any pedestrian can give. And being basically middle-aged, I'm a middle-aged Kenyan.
Yeah.
So, but and I can give anecdotal experience, but I can also give a mirror into outcomes, which anybody can assess, regardless of expert opinion. And one thing I can say is yes. The short answer is yes to the question: are we finding more people on meds nowadays than before? The answer is yes. Are we having more people being diagnosed? The answer is yes. Now it begs the question then, are these diagnoses accurate? And you mentioned something just now of the UK and the partnership they had, and they set a very low bar that qualifies one as being mentally unwell.
Yeah.
And being now, like they'll give meds to these people. So I say, for me, I think you have to look at 2 layers, or maybe 3. The first layer is psychiatry. I'm not a psychologist. I will say that again. I'm not a psychiatrist. But you have to look at the physiological aspects of mental health. If you get a head trauma, let's say you have a motorbike accident and you get a head trauma and that affects your motor skills, that is a mental issue because it's your brain. Again, if you look at some of the classified forms of personality disorders such as schizophrenia or even bipolar disorder, and there's a chemical link to that personality disorder. So you cannot just say it's behavioral, or you cannot just dismiss it as a trauma. And that's why they are given certain meds. I think people on bipolar disorder are given lithium treatment as the primary form of treatment because there's something that regulates your mood in your brain that's off. We cannot wish that level away. But then again, there's the second layer which I want to talk to, and I think here is where we have more control, is the behavioral aspect of it.
Yeah.
In every social reality, there's a point of entry and a point of exit. If somebody goes to war, for example, you have a KDF soldier going to Somalia, and he's
going to Haiti.
Sadly. And then he ends up killing somebody, maybe for the first time. That may be a trauma, a psychological trauma, not necessarily the chemical ones we are talking about.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. However, that's the point of entry. He's feeling a certain way. He's experiencing certain things. Probably he's having nightmares because of an action, an experience he had in war. He has entered. Now, what this guy needs to do is find a point of exit. And that's where pharma comes in. Pharmaceuticals and the whole industry that is mental health comes in. At what point will this guy get out? Will we give him meds to deal with his trauma, his PTSD? Will these meds work or not? So if there's no point of entry, this guy will be stuck in a continuous loop of being mentally ill. And sadly, that's what's happening now more than the other thing, which is to exit. But think of it this way. Let's use another example. Let me use a real example. I don't like using too many hypothetical examples. Let me use my personal example. Around 2014, a year after the time we were together, around 2014, 15-ish, I had a very nasty personal life experience. And it was in my home as a family, the head of a family, and it was also at the workplace because I was caught in between a situation where people were trying to sabotage my work in the workplace. They had seen I was vulnerable because I was going through certain things in my personal life, so they were trying to actively mess me up. So they were doing crazy things to destroy me. So that was the point of entry. And I was in a mess. I was feeling bad. What people would say, you're depressed, you're traumatized, because I'm going through all these things at the same time. So I was in it, the point of entry. But I knew very, very fast I needed a point of exit. I could have very easily gone and seen a shrink, paid money every week to tell them my problems and how bad I'm feeling and what, again, I'm feeling bad about. Next week, I'll come back when I think of something else I'm feeling bad about. That's basically what shrinks do every day. So I asked myself, instead of using that money to pay a shrink, why don't I join a gym where I'm not thinking of these problems? I am a trained martial artist. I am a black belt taekwondo holder. I have done Muay Thai. I used to do professional martial arts up to the time I was 22 years old. I stopped because of a knee injury. And I thought to myself, how can such a guy who has had all these achievements be brought down because he's feeling bad? Instead of sitting in bed and thinking of all the things I'm going through, why don't I go back to training? So I went back to very rigorous martial arts training. I was training every day. When you're training, you don't think of the problems you have.
But the problems will come back later.
No, they don't, because at the end of the day, the problem is depression is internal. It's about here. It's not so much about what's going on. I was dealing with what's going on outside, but it had come to an
end. Does the gym take away your problems, your personal problems? Does the gym take away your personal your problems at the office?
No, it doesn't. But I left the office. You see, action, point of exit. But you see, even if you leave a place that you're going through something, you still have the trauma of it. Then that's what I'm talking about. The gym deals with that. And even now, going back, let's take a step back. Let's work with what you've said. Does the gym help you deal with the problems in the office? What can help me deal with the problems in the office? Point of exit. That's what I should be asking, or that's what anyone with problems in the office should be asking, not staying in bed and saying, I'm depressed, my boss is a bad boss, I don't know what to do now, tomorrow I have to wake up. No, you sit, okay, fine, I have a boss. What do I do? He's bad. What options do I have? If I leave my job today, what bills will I pay? How will I get that money? Point of exit. There's always a point of entry and a point of exit. The worst thing is to be stuck in the middle after you've made the point of entry. And that's what I believe, or I presume, Big Pharma takes advantage of. Because now we are like, he's depressed. Keep him on meds. So you own it. You own depression as your identity.
You take the meds and go back to the bad boss.
Yes, you go back to the bad boss and you keep dealing with it. And you become a victim. We've spoken about this before when we talk about masculinity. You embrace victimhood. You are saying, this is just who I am. and I'm taking medicines to deal with it, and it's who I am, and it will continue. Your identity with depression is synonymous. I am a depressed person. Now the other guy, like me, has gone to the gym. I'm even fitter now. I'm more fit. So you look at outcomes. You can argue with me all day about actions, but you cannot argue with outcomes. The guy who is going to the gym is fit. He's more physically fit. He's more productive to his community. He's probably building a family. He's now, okay, fine, I've been through a divorce. What next? He's not going to stay in bed. He's like, okay, how do I pick up the pieces? Point of exit. So I wish Big Pharma, okay, not Big Pharma, Pharma and all these institutions that deal with mental health would be more focused on creating points of exit. And sadly, they do not. They create points of dependence, where you're stuck in this loop and you're constantly spending $50 every week going to a shrink to tell your problem.
Yeah. That name sounds really...
Okay, a counselor or a psychologist or a therapist. I respect the profession, but I'm saying the profession would be better if even that therapist, his or her goal was usinione tena. You don't see me again. I'm trying to get you to the point of exit.
Do you think that's their goal?
Not anymore, because they give you meds, you come back, and in any case, they'll be out of a job if you don't go back. So who will pay them? You get what I'm saying? It's capitalism. So at the end of the day...
Do you think mental therapy is capitalism?
It's now being done in such a way. It shouldn't be. That's what I'm saying. Look, everything can be looked at in a different way. If there was a point of exit, that's another story. If you go through it so that you can exit it, that's another way. It's just the same way with incarceration. If someone goes to jail, the idea, in an ideal world, you should come out repentant and remorseful and become a law-abiding citizen. But we've seen half the time people come out and they even go back within the same week or a month, or they end up being even bad or repeating their crimes because there's no point of exit.
Yeah.
So the same thing, in my view, you asked for my opinion, should be mental health, and those caretakers of mental health institutions charged with mental wellness should always ensure a point of exit. And that's not happening now because of the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, ask yourself, forget even mental health. Panadol, every other time they release a new Panadol Plus Extra, but they still produce Panadol Original. Why? If this one is stronger. It's business. And business taken a notch higher is control. Who is easier to control? Somebody who is weak or someone who is strong? Someone who is weak.
Yes.
Who is weaker? Someone who is depressed or someone who is not depressed? So if I can keep you depressed, again, entry and exit, I can control you. Then I can... I'm just giving now hypothetical, back to hypothetical. We need people to pass a bill saying A, B, C, D. It's easier to mobilize these controlled people than the ones who are like, no, that's rubbish. And the one who would say that is not under that quagmire of control.
I wonder whether there are... Most of these days, you hear people saying that they're dealing with depression, they're dealing with mental health. I never used to hear this sometimes back. And I've just been wondering why a lot of people are embracing the mental illness and can easily say that I am suffering from mental breakdown or I am this and that, especially men. But these days you hear a lot of that and you hear a lot of people trying to get help. And I've just been wondering whether it is because of the life that we live. As, for example, in town, we are having a lot of, back and forth, looking for money, staying in traffic, having bad bosses or bosses that are making you do crazy things like the one that was trying to shoot you down or throw you under the bus. So I don't know whether it is true that a lot of people are having serious mental problems or because sort of we've become weak and we just want to deal with these things. We no longer want to go for walks. We no longer want to go to the gym. We no longer want to bike. We no longer want to do things that can, the things that men used to do. I don't know whether it's because, what do you think it is because of the things that men used to do that is the reason why we are sort of slacking and sliding into this mental hole?
It is because we are not doing what men used to do that we are sinking into this hole. It is because we are not doing what men used to do. Men are not men anymore. We spoke a few minutes ago about masculinity.
Yes.
You're talking about somebody, let me just say exactly what you've said. Somebody who is in the city in Nairobi, he's in an SQ, he has to make ends meet. Guess what? 80 years ago, okay, 60 years ago, okay, 70 years ago, during the Mau Mau movement, the Mau Mau rebellion, there were some men in some forest, in Karura Forest. Now it's called Karura Forest. In fact, there are some tunnels there, the Mau Mau tunnels, who didn't know whether they would be alive by the end of the day. But they knew that some foreigners had come, they had taken their land, and they didn't know how, but they knew they are men and they had to do something because they had families. They had lived for generations before these people came and took their land and forced them to use a kipande and have forced labor. They knew they had to do something. They didn't know what, but they knew they are men, they are strong, they can fight. And they stayed in the forest without food and they did all these things so that they can survive. For you to come and cry in an SQ because you can't log into Tinder because you're depressed.
Come on.
No, seriously, think about it this way. The point I'm trying to make is this. All these guys needed to survive. You said it yourself. Have men become weak? Men have become weak. Yes, that's the short answer. It's because, again, so many things, education, socialization, what. Too many factors, but the short answer is yes. We are taking for granted what it means to be alive, what it means to survive. Right now, in 2024, men and women have access to technology and healthcare like never before. Yet, they are on antidepressants and other forms of mental health medical remedies than ever before. Why? Right now, the life expectancy, people are living longer now, and the life expectancy in general will be expected to increase over the next few decades. So the question is, why are you unhappy? What's going on? What's wrong? And I don't know.
I don't have a job.
Yeah,
my girlfriend has just left me.
Imagine your girlfriend has not left you. The Mau Mau guy hasn't eaten for 3 weeks, and he's the world you're enjoying today was because of such men. That's what I'm just trying to make you understand. I'm trying to contextualize history. If you're to look at history and where we are now, from the time we gained independence to now, it's basically yesterday. Even if you're to take a nation like America that has been free for centuries from the time they gained independence, it's still nothing compared to the civilizations that existed before. There were times of warring states. Men have to understand your life is not about being happy. Your life is about duty. You have to wake up, and this has been said by many people, if online, before, offline, people like Richard Cooper, Kevin Samuels, you name all these people who have been strong advocates for a return of masculinity. Your job is duty. You wake up because you have to do stuff, not because you feel like doing it. Let me say this, you've heard this quote over and over again. The man who goes to the gym when he feels like will always lose to the man who goes to the gym regardless of how he feels.
Say that again.
The man who goes to the gym only when he feels like will always lose to the man who goes to the gym regardless of how he feels. Because this guy will wake up, he's tired, his rent is due, he'll still work out and he'll get the six-pack because he's consistent. And that's the male imperative. That's the masculine imperative. You don't do what you feel. You do what you need to. You go out there, you do your mjengo work, as you said, jobs. Hata kama ni 200, you don't know what will happen at the end of the day, but you know you'll go there and line up for a mjengo job because you have 2 kids in the house. That is the men our dads were. The man that is there now will sit at home on social media.
Many people don't like that man anymore.
Yeah, they don't, because that is the man who can say no. Remember what I told you in the beginning? The 2 most dangerous people in this world, the 2 most dangerous groups of people in this world. Group 1, the minority that control the majority. Group 2, the minority that cannot be controlled. And the majority is everyone else. Our fathers, that masculine guy who would be beat down and do anything, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, are that minority that can't be controlled. They are those. They had their homesteads, and someone would come and tell them, do this. Today we are building a road here. They'll say, no. In Ushago, in Gishagi, up country, those days, the government or whatever system was ruling at that time, the time of provincial administration, the government would come, or a chief or whoever would come to that homestead or those homesteads along the area they want to build a road. They say, tunataka kujenga barabara hapa. Hapana. You have men with families, you'll not do anything. But now, that man is not there because first of all, the men that are there today have no families, they are single, they have no kids. So you take all that away from a man and he's like, okay, fine, you want to build a road here, so I have nothing to fight for. I have nothing I've built. I have nothing to cherish. So you take away the masculine imperative from a man, you take away the ability to make choices independently. And such people can easily be controlled. And those masculine men, I keep saying this and it cannot be said enough, are the reason we are enjoying the privileges even of this free speech we have today, because they had to make those sacrifices. And they did it because they had to, not because they felt like. Yeah.
How does Big Pharma then steals themselves into this picture and decide? You said that there is an entry and exit point, so you enter and then you get stuck there. Yeah. How does then Big Pharma take advantage of that? Because
you are vulnerable in between. Before entering, you're not vulnerable. Within, you're vulnerable. When you exit, you're not vulnerable. So if you're vulnerable, you can be controlled. Big Pharma can be expanded further to the aspect of who owns these pharmaceutical companies anyway. You get what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's not a broke guy or it's not an average Joe who owns these companies. And these people shape the landscape of the nations and states where they run these companies in. So it is incumbent upon them to push certain agenda. And you can't, again, I go back to the issue of control. You can't push agenda on a population if they're not under your control. And people who are weak are more susceptible to control than people who are not weak.
What do you mean by weak?
Again, we can bring it back to the conversation. In this case, people who are within that bracket of not exiting, they are mentally unwell. A mentally unwell person is weaker than a mentally well person. So it goes beyond even capitalism.
Can we use the word vulnerable?
Yes, and I used it. In between that point of entry and exit, you're vulnerable. So you're vulnerable, and if you're vulnerable, you're susceptible to control. If I pass a bill as a politician and I have all these men who are vulnerable, and they are with their women and whatever, I have a movement I can control. But if I don't have vulnerable people, the next thing I need to do is what? Convince. Convincing is usually harder than control. And that's why even in politics, the best leaders, the ones who last longest, are the charismatic ones who used admiration to convince people to vote for them, as opposed to the ones who used brutal power to force or control people to vote for them. You can, at the end of the day, it's about power. Conquest is about, I can come to your house, I convince you to do something, or I can come and force you to do it.
Now, I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their own country, in their local area. Now, the truth is, there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs. And those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years, I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans. Okay? Because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using paybill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. Just need to go to the description, click on the link, and you can buy this book. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book, and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online, and I've been traveling, and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much, and now back to programming.
It's easier to force you if I have the power. And what did I say? There are two kinds of people: the minority who control the majority, and the minority who can't be controlled, and in between there's the vast majority who they can control. So that is it. It's about control. Yeah.
You have lived in the United States. How is it like the other side with in terms of mental healthness, wellness?
It's the same thing. Actually, all these things began in the West. It didn't begin here. Like if you're to talk about Big Pharma and all these things we have been speaking about, do you remember the song by Bob Marley, Get Up, Stand Up?
Fight for your rights.
Yeah. He says, there's a part he says, I'm tired of this ism, schism games. Like feminism, ism, schism games.
What are those games?
Exactly. What are those games? And most of these ism, schism games started from the West. And we are nation states in Africa. We were colonized by these countries that are more powerful than us. So most of this urban contemporary life is from the West. I'm not blaming the West because we can still choose. Our leaders can choose, and we choose our leaders. But at the end of the day, most of these values were not from here, really. They were not from here. If you're talking about, as you said it yourself, like 20 years ago, it was unheard of to hear someone saying, oh, I'm going to the therapist, or I'm depressed. I didn't know even what bipolar was and all these other personality disorders up to like 10 years ago. Before that, having grown up in Kenya, either you are normal ama ni mwenda wazimu. This aspect of mental health, ilianza huko, to answer your question, yes. So it started in the West, and the USA obviously is part of the West. It's not something that's unique to one country, but I would say the West in general. And any country that's under the behest of the West obviously has to adopt Western values. We are adopting so many Western values.
How much have we adopted in terms of Western values?
We as Kenyans.
Yes, we as Kenyans and Africans. I think I would ask that in respect to Africans rather than Kenyans.
Well, a lot, but I will also have to put a caveat and say it's both good and bad. It's a double-edged sword. There are some things which are very beneficial that we've got from the West. The fact that we're sitting here, we're using equipment that's probably from the West. But there are some things that are dangerous, and they are ruining us.
Like what?
I said this already before in like feminism. The iteration of feminism that we discussed, and that is a breakdown of the family, a disregard of the masculine imperative, and a continuous push for lack of accountability at all aspects of life. Those are things that came from the West. We didn't have them here before. Even we had for example, Nyumba Kumi, which would hold people within the neighborhood accountable. If, say, my son was a thief, the neighborhood would come together and they were like, hey, Baba, Nani, we want to talk to you. Because we never used to even have fences. We never used to shut doors.
Yeah.
So that's a recent thing. And then that issue would be dealt with. Nyumba Kumi, community. Africans are communal by nature. But now they make you hate that about yourself. And they make you cherish what is actually having negative outcomes. I keep saying, you don't have to agree with anything I say, but look at outcomes. Be objective enough to look at outcomes. Are we better with less families? Are even women better being in their midlife like me, in their 40s and 50s, and they're unable to, and they don't have anything else? You have your cat and a plant you water every morning and your mahogany PhD on the wall. Is that a life you really wanted? And most women would confess, yeah, I'm happy that I got the education, but There is more to this. I did not have to forfeit something. It's not either or. I could still have had a family. I could have still been respectful and submitted to a man as the head of my home. But now they're teaching women not to submit to anything, yet the same women telling them not to submit to men are submitting to bosses in the office.
Are they?
Yes, you'll be fired if you don't go to work. If look, the only time you can tell me you're strong, independent is if you can refuse to go to work. But they can't. The feminists go to work and they report to the NGOs they go to every morning. They can't wake up and defy their boss. They'll be fired. And usually the boss is a man. So my question is, it's like, again, a red herring. You're telling them these men are the bad guy. To yield to a man's authority is wrong. And yet, that's how society functions. Even in your office, you're not all the same. There's a CEO, there's a project manager, there's a HR manager, there's an accountant, and there's auxiliary staff. So the sameness that they are pushing for does not even exist in the institutions they work for. And that's where you find later in life people regret the choices they make. And I keep saying this, ability to choose does not imply positive outcomes. You can choose and end up with negative outcomes. You can choose and end up with positive outcomes. But now the liberal thought is just creating a fallacy, an implicit fallacy that freedom is equals to positive outcomes. And it's not the case. You could choose something that is to your detriment. You could choose to sacrifice your best childbearing years to get a college degree, while you could have done that as you raise kids and still have the same degree and be under the leadership of a man who is prophet, provider, protector, and takes care of you, and you'd be happy. But now you're 40, 45, 50, the only thing you have is your qualifications. You die tomorrow, no one remembers you.
Do you think I need to be remembered?
Yes, you don't even need to. You will be, because you are adding value. And the only way you can be remembered is offering actual solutions to everyday social issues, which this podcast is. There's someone else who is not doing this. They may have the ideas, but ideas not shared are not useful. Love Jagero, hate Jagero, we will always go back to what he's doing, and we'll be able to listen to it. Your children will. Your grandchildren will. And even if they don't, they will be there. We'll see your kid there or whoever. But now, there are people who are forfeiting that to pursue certain things, and later when it's too late, they realize, oh my God. And the people who are egging them on are nowhere. What do you do?
Buana, there is something I want to ask you. I don't know if you've read about it.
Yeah.
Did you read Mukoma Ngugi's tweet about his father?
What did he say? Remind me.
He said that his father was...
by the way, before he said that, he bought one of my books. Anyway, continue.
We can discuss anybody who buys your book, but
maybe he hated it and threw it. Anyway, just continue. Yeah.
He said that a lot of people are taking this back to mental health and saying, I'm surprised that you did not see the tweet where Mukoma Ngugi said that his father was a wife batterer. Okay.
I think I know about that controversy, but I didn't think of it as a tweet.
Mm-hmm. He tweeted it and Facebooked it and said, there I said it.
Okay.
And a lot of people were of the opinion that, look, you are 54 years old. You were whining that your father beat your mother, or battered your mother. You've been hanging onto this guy's coat for the last I don't know how long. Carrying his name everywhere. And the only reason why you are in the United States and doing all those great things is because of this man. And somebody was saying, why are you throwing your father to the wolves? Yeah. And then the other thing is that your father just got a very bad divorce at a very old age. By the time you're saying this thing, your father was senile, was very sick and living alone. Why did you have to kick him in the ribs?
Yes.
You know, and it ties back to, and a lot of people were saying that this is his trauma. Yeah, let him deal with it.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I don't want to speak too much about that situation because we don't know beyond what he said. We don't know what happens in the background. We don't know much about what goes on behind closed doors. But yes, to some extent, that's true. It's. I wouldn't use the word trauma. I would say it's his personal life. Let him and I don't. In my opinion, he shouldn't tell anyone. It's none of my business. It's none of your business. It's not the ex-community's business to know what your dad did. We don't care. Who are you?
But would you kick your father in the ribs at such an old age?
And now tying into what I was saying earlier, those are the kind of men we don't need. I'm not saying Mukoma in particular, but that aspect of tossing people under the bus. You see, that's the thing people don't understand. The male imperative is loyal. There's something about brotherhood. There's something about, I don't know what it is, honor. There's certain things you cannot do as a man because of honor and integrity. It's not because you can't, it's because you choose not to. So yes, I wouldn't do that myself. And anyway, I don't know. I'm not so much for these online debates because half the people who are commenting, they also have things which are worse than that we just don't know about. Yeah. But you get what I'm saying. Men would die because of honor. But that man is becoming slowly extinct. Anaogopa, anagoaya. You know, like, women, you understand. The feminine imperative, feminine preserves and conserves. Masculine builds and protects and fights. If you get a masculine man and tell him something he doesn't like, he'll say, no, I won't do it. If you get a feminine woman and you tell her something she doesn't like, she will say no, and then she will deal with it in a different way. If you get a masculine woman, which most of these feminists with short dyed hair and 100 piercings and 10 million tattoos have a masculine woman and you tell her no, she'll fight you. And that is the mistake, and that is wrong, because that doesn't add value. You've seen women being like just beating up men. So when you bring a return to the yin-yang harmony, masculine, feminine, that's only when things will start to grow and start to make sense. You disavow that, you're on a slippery slope. Yes.
So what would you take men that are now saying, coming to the end of this discussion, men that are feeling sick, feeling down, feeling out of place? What would you tell them? Go to the gym, see a therapist, or do both?
Well, I can't tell you. First of all, let me say something. I never tell anyone what to do. Do what you want. Do what you want.
Remember, if it were you.
Remember earlier you asked me, what if a woman doesn't want to get married? So don't. The only people I care about what they do are people I care about. But if, as you said, I would tell this person, sit down and ask yourself, what is the best exit point? For him, it may not be the gym. Maybe he's not that kind of a guy. I am a martial artist, so for me, it's easy to get into training martial arts. For someone else, a musician, for example, who finds himself, has gone through an unpleasant situation that leads to trauma, I would maybe tell him or her, why don't you write a new song? Maybe kind of detailing how you will overcome this so that you can exit. That would be easier for that person than going to the gym. All said and done, find an exit point. Do not make trauma, depression, whatever you want to call it, do not make it synonymous with your identity. It's like eating. Is hunger your identity? When you're hungry, you eat and you continue doing what you do until the next time you're hungry. So, yes, I agree. You can feel depressed. You can go through traumatic times. You can go through a nasty situation. Deal with it. Find an exit. Life continues. Otherwise, you just make yourself perpetually vulnerable and you're stuck in a loop. You are becoming worse and worse. You're not even being productive to society. You might lose your job because you're calling in sick. You're nasty to the people around you. You become this unpleasant guy and you've just ceased to be productive. Yeah.
Mr. Munuku, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a long one. It's been a scandalous one. It's been educational.
Yeah.
It's been all those things combined together. Yeah. I like conversations because at the end of the day, we must hear all voices. The other day, I was having an interview with a gentleman called Magnus, and another lady called me and told me that we don't want such kind of people on your platform. So, but then...
what did he say that she didn't like?
obvious things.
Okay.
That's the men. There are things women don't want men to talk about.
Yeah.
Like he was talking about polygamy.
Oh, okay.
That he embraces it fully. He has got all the wealth. He can plant one in Mombasa to take care of the ranch in Mombasa. Plant another one. And she was like, he was very pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And so we can't just have. I think the problem that we're also having is having very safe conversations that are not helping us think.
Yes, and let me quickly say something. This may be good to add. It may add value to whoever watches. And It may add value. It's good you brought that issue up about polygamy. The sociological term is actually polygyny. Polygyny is one man, multiple women. Polyandry is one woman, multiple men. And combined, it's called polygamy. Anyway, there's a lady I saw, a celebrity on TV, or who was a celebrity. She was probably one of these big names we had, and she said she released a video on her YouTube channel which I reacted to very candidly because I'm all for facts. And one thing she kept saying about a high value man, because the video was, what is a high value man? Is he is not a cheat. He's not a cheat. And one thing I want to say is this, because you brought up the issue of polygamy. Men and women are not the same.
Obviously.
Men are hardwired differently from women in general. Men are hardwired to go forth, scatter your seed. And that's why, again, in the earlier conversation we had, and that's why men are gatekeepers to relationships. You can't be a gatekeeper to what is likely to be, you're likely to abuse. Imagine if men were gatekeepers to sex. Likewise, women gravitate to attention and excitement. And because of that, they are also gatekeepers to sex. They're not gatekeepers to relationships. So a man, by the way, a man who has options, we are talking about high value. The higher value you have, the more options you have. You can choose to cheat. It doesn't make it right, but that's something you need to understand. I know if I drive on a road without a seatbelt, I'll crash. I need to know that so that I can wear my seatbelt. If you're a woman today and you want to end up with a perfect spouse, you need to know the realities of male nature. And likewise, if you're this guy who wants to end up with a woman as a partner, you need to know the realities of female nature. You can't wish them away. So you have to know the higher up you go in terms of value of a man, the more likely he is to cheat, because he'll likely exercise those options. Anyway, too much.
Looks like we need to talk about polygamy. But I want to talk with you in our next episode. I don't know when that would be.
Yeah.
About Kenyan politics.
Okay.
About African politics.
Yes.
About poverty.
Yeah.
About wealth.
Yes.
Because I think I have never gotten somebody who I can talk with about that.
Okay.
And I feel like every other day we're going down the drain.
Yeah.
And we talked about the control.
Yes.
Where the West African countries, do not have their own central bank. Their central banks are all in France.
Yeah, which it could be defined as a failed state. If you want to define what is a failed state, that could be an aspect of being a failed state.
Yeah.
So
do you think Kenya is a failed state?
Not yet, but it could be if we don't watch out. It's not yet, but
some of the failed states that we have in Africa.
Somalia is a failed state. Congo is a failed state. A failed state.
Congo is the richest country in Africa.
Yeah, but it's a failed state. What is a failed state? We have to ask ourselves that question. A failed state is one where the government is not in control.
We have Chinese harvesting timber.
It could be foreigners.
And Rwandese harvesting something else in the eastern part of it.
Exactly. It could be that, or it could also be militia within the same country, or it could be the fact that a country is war-torn, like Somalia.
Yeah.
Or there's no centralized system of authority. It's who has more guns. That kind of thing.
More guns and more charcoal.
Yes. Or who has a bigger wallet, in the case where a country is basically auctioned out because all the institutions are run by multinationals. A good example maybe would be an economically emasculated country, maybe like Zambia. Zambia is not war-torn, but for the most part, most institutions are...
Let us not hijack that conversation that is coming later. I really want us to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
All right? So thank you very much, people of the internet. I hope you enjoyed. This is Robert Munuku. He has got a lot to say about poverty in Africa. You know, I want my podcast to be to have an African feel.
Yeah.
So I don't want just to deal. I don't want it to be a local channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I've got the right.
Yeah. And in any case, most of these things cut across. So they apply. We're in a global village.
And until another episode. Bye for now.